All right, Rabbi, we're on DAF. Nun Dalet Amud Aleph, about 12 lines down. Let's just review where we're holding. We saw a machlokus in the Brisa regarding the topic of our Mishnah, a person who is mitame, midameya, or menasech, which means what he does what we called hezek she'eno nicker, an physically unrecognizable hezek, which me'ikar hadin, according to the letter of the law, he's not financially liable for. But the rabbis penalize such a person, and they say that you have to pay. But they only require you to pay, according to our Mishnah, they only require you to pay if you do it b'mezid, intentionally. But if you do it b'shogeg, then you don't have to pay. Now, that's actually, in the Brisa, the topic of a machlokas. Rabbi Meir says that even if you do it unintentionally, you have to pay as well. It's a rabbinic penalty. And the Gemara's conclusion was that we see two diametrically opposed philosophies between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir makes a distinction between biblical violations and rabbinic violations. When you do a rabbinic violation, we will penalize you even more. That is, even when you do it b'shogeg. Why? Because rabbinic law is something that people tend to disregard more than biblical law. It's not in the Torah, so people tend to... And that's why we have to come down even harder on a person who violates it, to the point where even if you did it b'shogeg, we're going to penalize you. That's the case of our Mishnah, where you mixed someone's produce with something that's forbidden in order to compromise it. That's only a rabbinic law that it becomes, that you've committed an act of damage, and therefore we're going to penalize you even more. But let's say a person does an act of bishul on Shabbos, for example. If he cooks on Shabbos, he's committed a biblical offense. So there Rabbi Meir says, we're only going to penalize you if you did it b'mezid, but we're not going to penalize you if you did it b'shogeg. Why? Because people are not going to be so easy to disregard biblical law. So even if we don't come down hard on you if you did it b'shogeg, we don't have to worry that this is going to promote repeat offenders or copycat offenders and stuff like that. That's the whole rationale of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda's philosophy is just the opposite. Rabbi Yehuda's philosophy is that we're more machmir on biblical offenses than we are in rabbinic offenses. And that's why he holds that by the rabbinic offense of our Mishnah, which is when you just do a hezek she'eno nicker, an physically unrecognizable damage to someone's property, which is only a rabbinical offense, we're only going to penalize the mezid offender, we're not going to penalize the shogeg offender. But when it comes to something like cooking on Shabbos, Rabbi Yehuda feels that we have to come down hard both on a shogeg and a mezid, because after all, it's usher from the Torah. So two completely diametrically opposed philosophies between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. We're now at a point in the Gemara where the Gemara is now going to challenge Rabbi Meir's position. Is he really consistent? Because we're going to see some examples of where Rabbi Meir, even though it's a rabbinic offense, does not come down hard on the shogeg as he does in our Mishnah. So let's take a look now. So the Brisa says, Toshma, let's see, Toshma, Achal Truma Timeya, Mishalem, Chulin Tahorim. Shilem Chulin Timeim Mau. So here's the background. If a person goes ahead and he eats a Kohen's Truma, so he's done two things wrong. Number one, he's a Yisrael, and he's not allowed to eat Truma. But number two, he's created financial loss for the Kohen. The Torah, it's based on a pasuk. We're not going to go into this in any detail right now, but the Torah says that when you deprive a Kohen of his Truma, it says, V'nasayin la Kohen es HaKodesh, that biblically all you need to do is replace the grain. And it doesn't matter what kind of grain you give him. As long as it's chulin, it automatically, by replacing it, becomes truma, and you've replaced it. What happens if the grain that you've given him is an inferior grain? Doesn't matter. If it's less valuable, doesn't matter. The bottom line is that the Torah only requires you to replace the grain. We're not concerned about the monetary value. Okay? Why that is, we're not going to discuss today. But that's the Torah law. The rabbi said, no, if you're going to do something that is going to, in some way, reduce the Kohen's gain, because before he had really good truma, and now you've compromised the value of the truma, there's going to be a rabbinic penalty involved under certain conditions. So now, in this situation, let's say a Kohen has tamei truma. How much is tamei truma worth? It's worth very little, because he can't eat it. He can only at best use it as fuel to burn, under his pot. So it's worth very little. I go ahead as a Yisrael and I eat the Kohen's tamei truma. The halacha is that I have to replace it rabbinically with not only just any grain, I have to replace it with tohar chulin grain. That's the rabbinic penalty. Midioraisa, any grain, even if I take tamei grain and I just give it to the Kohen, I've replaced it automatically now, and it becomes truma that's tamei. Doesn't matter. But rabbinically, I have to replace it with tohar chulin, so now he's actually gained by it. Now, shilem chulin tamei mahu. What would be the halacha if b'di'eved the Yisrael replaces it not with tohar chulin, but rather with tamei chulin? And it automatically turns into truma, so the Kohen is right back where he started from. He lost tamei truma, and now he regains tamei truma. Is that such a terrible thing? So Amar Sumchus Mishum Reb Meir B'shogeg Tashlum of Tashlumin B'meizid Ein Tashlum of Tashlumin. So at face value, Rabbi Meir says it depends. If it was done b'shogeg, so then we let it go. If it was done b'meizid, we're going to come down and we're going to say no, it's not a valid payment, and you've got to redo it. B'chachamim omrim echad zeh ve'echad zeh tashlum of tashlumin v'chozer u'mishalim chulin tohorim. And the chachamim say, they seem to be more machmir, and they say in both cases the initial tamei grain that you gave him turns into truma, but then we penalize you further and we require you to give him an equal amount of tohar chulin grain, which will remain chulin. In other words, it's still completely the Kohen's, but instead of turning into truma like the first payment, it remains chulin. That's an additional penalty. Vahavinon ba, and then the question is raised about this brisa. B'meizid amai ein tashlum tashlum. Let's go back to Rabbi Meir for a second. We said that if the Yisrael intentionally gives him back chulin that's tamei, we said it's no good, he's got to redo it. But why? What did he do that was so terrible? Tavo alav bracha da'achal minei midi delo chazile bimei tumaso, v'kamashalim le midi de chazile bimei tumaso. After all, what this Yisrael is doing is giving him something that's even more valuable than what he consumed. After all, when I as a Yisrael consume tamei truma, I've eaten something that's usher to me. So what am I replacing it with? I'm replacing it with something that I myself am permitted to eat. If I'm tamei, I can eat tamei chulin, and I'm taking out of pocket stuff that is valuable to me, and I'm replacing the truma that's tamei. It probably even has a higher market value, but the Gemara is pointing out is that to the Yisrael himself, it certainly has a higher value. So what is he doing that's so terrible? He's replacing what he took from the Kohen. What is he doing that's so wrong? So Rava says, and some say that it was said not by Rava but by the stam of the Gemara, by the anonymous author of the Gemara, that you're right. In that situation, there's no reason to penalize him any further. But there's a shtickle missing from this price, and it has to be read as follows. Achal truma tameya mishalim koldu. That if you eat truma of the Kohen that's already tamei, so then you can replace the grain with whatever. It could be tamei, it could be tahar, whatever you want to replace it with is fine. Even lechatchila, you could give him tamei chulin, and it'll automatically turn into truma that's tamei, but that's okay, because that's what you consume, so you're just replacing it, right? You're not giving him anything of lesser value. But here's the case, achal truma tahora. What if you eat truma that was tahar of the Kohen, then mishalim chulin tahora? Then the rabbis stepped in and they said, even though midioraisa, technically you could just give him replacement grain, even if it's tamei, and you'd be fulfilling your obligation. But we don't want the Kohen to take back something of lesser value than was taken from him. Mm-hmm. So therefore, give him back chulin that's tahor. And on that, the question is raised: if b'di'evet shilem chulin tamei and mahu. What if instead of doing what the rabbis told you to do by giving him tahor chulin, you gave him tamei chulin? So sumchus omer mishum Reb Meir b'shogeg tashlum of tashlumin b'meizid ein tashlum of tashlum. So sumchus quoting Reb Meir says it depends. If you did it b'shogeg, then we're not going to penalize you. because since this is only a rabbinic requirement in the first place and you did it accidentally, we're not going to penalize you further. You've made the Kohen, you've replaced the grain as the Torah says, we're going to let you off the hook. But if you did it intentionally, so then we're going to come down hard on you. And we're going to say, listen, you didn't listen to the Chachamim flagrantly, so you have to replace it. You got to do it, you got to pay him again. V'chachamim omrim echad zeh ve'echad zeh tashlum av tashlumin v'chozer mishalim chulin tahor. And the Chachamim say, no, even if you do it b'shogeg, we're going to come down hard on you. The replacement grain that you gave him that's tameh turns automatically into truma by giving it to him, but we require you to give him another batch which will remain chulin, and the coin now has extra added value. But then the issue is, and Ravacha Berei de Rav Ika explains that the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim is, do we penalize the shogeg atu because we want to reinforce a case when a person does it b'mezid or not? And I'm going to read the parentheses, even though some people take it out. The Reb Meir savar lo kansu shogeg atu mezid v'chachamim omrim kansu. That Reb Meir says you don't penalize shogeg atu mezid, and the chachamim say you do penalize shogeg in addition to the mezid. So this is our question. This is the conclusion of this long question. The question is, you see from here an example of a rabbinic obligation, which is that when you when you consume a Kohen's grain, even though the Torah only requires you to give him replacement grain of any value, nevertheless the Chachamim require you to give him Tohar Chulin so that he's getting back at least the value of what was taken from him. So the Reb Meir says that even though this is a rabbinic requirement, we're not going to come down hard on you if you did it improperly b'shogeg. If you did it improperly b'shogeg and you gave him back tamei grain, which now is far less than the value because it's going to turn into tamei truma, we're not going to penalize you. Well, this is contradictory to what we learned before in Reb Meir. Reb Meir had always said, like in our Mishnah, that if you violate a rabbinic law, not only do we penalize you if you do it b'mezid, but we penalize you if you do it b'shogeg, because we got to come down hard on people who are violators of rabbinic law. And here we're not coming down hard on you. That's the question. How do we reconcile this contradiction? Are you clear on the question?
Yes.
If you're clear on the question, then please hold what you have to say, because it's too confusing. We're gonna get bogged down. Okay? So I just ask for your indulgence. Okay? So the Gemara now answers as follows: Hachi hashta hasam gavra lishlume kamechavein ana nekom veliknase. So the Gemara answers like this. There's a conceptual difference between the two cases. When a person is engaged in trying to be a good guy and fix his wrong, then we don't penalize shogeg atu mezid. The only time we penalize shogeg atu mezid is if he's not doing something that's an act of remedy or an act of rectification. For example, a guy mixes my truma with my chulin. He's not doing anything to remedy. He's just being a bumbler, And there, Rabbi Meir says, even if you did it b'shogeg, we're going to penalize you. Here, a guy recognizes that he made a mistake. He ate his friend the Kohen's truma. He's trying to remedy the situation. He's trying to make proper restitution to the Kohen. Oh, he made a mistake. He gave him tamei. He gave him tamei chulin instead of tohar chulin. Rabbi Meir says, listen, the guy's trying to fix things, and because he's in the act of fixing things, and b'shogeg he bungles it, we're not going to penalize him. That's the conceptual difference between the two cases.
Is that an exile? He has to replace for what he stole.
So it's not. So that's the point. The Torah says, okay, fantastic, excellent question. The Torah says that because it was never really the Kohen's truma to begin with. It wasn't like his property that he grew the grain and he cultivated it, and it was given to him by the Torah. God says, give the Kohen that truma. What's that? Yeah, it's a davar kadosh, right? It's a holy gift that we give to the Kohen. And Hashem says, because it's the gift that I give to the Kohen, I also make the rules of what's going to happen when you take that truma away from him. It's not an act of gezela per se, or at least it doesn't have the same rules of gezela, but rather the rule is, as long as you replace the same amount of grain that you gave him, Hashem says, I'm not concerned about the dollar value of that grain. That's the Torah law. The rabbis wanted to make sure that you weren't going to mess around, so they said, make sure the Kohen's the dollar value of the truma is the same, so that if you give him something that's tameh instead of something that's tahor, we're going to make you do a redo. But that, again, it's only if you do it b'mezid according to Reb Meir, not if you do it b'shogeg, because at least you're trying to fix things. Tashma. Now we're going to see a series of similar cases where the Gemara is going to see this as a challenge to Reb Meir. It's going to answer in the same vein. Let's see. Dam shenitma v'zarko b'shogeg hurtza b'mezid lo hurtza. Here's a case of where, the Torah says that if blood that is extracted from the korban, what do we know about it? It has to be sprinkled on the mizbeach in most cases. Right? Now, what would happen if the dam becomes tameh before you have a chance to do zrika? According to the Torah, the tzitz is miratzeh. We've seen that concept in Zvachim before. It means that technically the Torah permits you to continue with the sprinkling of the blood even though it's tameh, and the forehead plate of the Kohen Gadol will atone for that tumah. It sort of like overrides the tumah because you're in the process of bringing a korban. But the rabbi said no, because we're scared of abuse, and therefore if the blood becomes tameh, we put the brakes on this korban and we make you do a redo. So, or at least we don't allow you to do the zrika. So the Gemara now says, "B'shogeg hurtza b'mezid lo hurtza." What if a kohen lets the dam become tameh, or it becomes tameh, and he sprinkles it anyway? So does the korban have efficacy or not? So the Brisa says that if it was done b'shogeg, b'di'evet it's good, because we fall back on Torah law. But if it was done b'mezid, we don't allow the korban to go, and we make you do a redo. So the question is, if we're going to say that this Brisa goes according to Reb Meir, which the Gemara wants to assume for argument's sake, then why doesn't Reb Meir come down hard on a shogeg also, if this is only a rabbinic violation? The Gemara's answer is, Amar lecha Reb Meir, hachi hashda hasam, gavra lechipurei kamechavein, anon nekom v'niknesei, question mark. Again, here's a guy, he's trying to fix things. He's in the process of doing something that's virtuous, which is to finish the korban process. As long as he's not maliciously and flagrantly violating the words of the rabbis, and he's doing it by accident, thinking that it's okay, we're not going to penalize him. Again, it's the consistent answer. When you're not doing something that's in the process of like trying to make things good, so then Reb Meir says we penalize a shogeg atu mezid. But if you're in the process of trying to do something good, to fix things, or to do something of virtue, to do a mitzvah, so then Reb Meir says we're not going to penalize the shogeg.
Was he zorek the dam b'shogeg, or it became tameh b'shogeg?
No, he zorek the dam b'shogeg. In other words, he thought that it was tahor, and by mistake he didn't realize that it was tameh. Toshma. Let's go on to the next brisa. Hama'aser b'shabes b'shogeg yoichal b'mezid lo yochal. Now, next case. A person tithes on Shabbos produce that's tevel, that's untithed produce. So if he did it, now we know that there's a rabbinic prohibition of tithing on Shabbos. Why? Why did the rabbis prohibit us from tithing on Shabbos? Because it appears like tikkun mana. It appears like you're fixing something. Fixing a kli on Shabbos is a malacha under many conditions. So by tithing, even though you're not fixing a kli physically, but it's in the same genre, and therefore the rabbis forbade it. It's only a rabbinic prohibition. So therefore, if you do it b'shogeg, we'll let it go and you can eat the food. But if you did it b'mezid, flagrantly violating the rabbis, then you can't eat the food. Can't eat the food, at least not until after Shabbos. So the question is, why doesn't Reb Meir come down hard on the shogeg? It's a rabbinic violation. So the Gemara answers, Hachi hashta asam gavra l'tikuni kamechavein anan likom v'liknesei. Same answer. He's a good guy. He's trying to rectify his food as a fruma yid to make sure that it's good for eating. So again, in this situation where he didn't realize that he was doing an isser because he didn't realize it was Shabbos or he didn't realize it was usser, the rabbis are not going to penalize him. Toshma. Hamat bil kelim b'Shabbos b'shogeg yishtamesh bahen b'mezid lo yishtamesh bahen. Very similar case. You're not allowed to go to mikvah on Shabbos to alleviate your tumah, and you're not allowed to take your kelim to the mikvah on Shabbos toivel them. Okay? Now, we'll put aside the law of a man going to mikvah. But let's talk about the kelim. You're not allowed to toivel a kli in the mikvah on Shabbos. Again, it looks like tikkun man. It looks like you're fixing something, but it's only a rabbinic law. If you did it b'shogeg, we'll let you use the plate. But if you did it b'mezid, flagrantly violating the rabbis, you can't use the plate. So the question is, why don't we come down hard on a shogeg atu mezid? It's a rabbinic law. Here again, hachi hashta hasam gavr l'tuhuri manakam echavein analekam v'liknasei. Again, it's a rhetorical question. He's a good guy. He's trying to make sure that his kelim are tohor. Why should we penalize him? He didn't realize what he was doing was usher on Shabbos, and therefore we're not going to penalize him because he's in the process of doing something virtuous. A guy wants to drive to shul.
So a good guy.
He's doing something good.
Yeah. So what do you want us to do, Bob? You can't.
Maybe we shouldn't come down harder.
Yeah.
So what should we do? What should we do? Send them home? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? In other words, you're right. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. There are rabbis who are of the opinion that if a person drives to shul, there are poskim who say he can't get an aliyah on Shabbos. In other words, we don't want to reward bad behavior. But let's say he doesn't know it's usher to drive on Shabbos. He's a tinok shenishba. He thinks it's just the chumrah. Yeah. He thinks that, just only frumies don't drive. Yeah.
They just want to keep the parking lot.
Right.
If it is true, only frumies don't drive.
Yeah, but he thinks that, So, okay. So there's what to discuss. Talk among yourselves. Or me, the Rebbe Yehuda. So then, now let's go to another part of this discussion. We said that Rebbe Yehuda, when it comes to rabbinic law, he goes easy on a shogeg, and he only comes down hard on a mazid, right? But is that really so? I'm going to show you an example where Rabbi Yehuda actually agrees with Reb Meir that when there's a violation of rabbinic law, Rabbi Yehuda also comes down hard on a shogeg. Where are we going to see this? The Tanya, here's the case. Naflu v'nispatzu echad shogeg ve'echad mezid lo yalu divrei Reb Meir v'Reb Yehuda. And Reb Yossi v'Reb Shimon omrim b'shogeg yalu b'mezid lo yalu. What the case that we're talking about in this brisa is as follows. There's a principle that when a prohibited substance falls into a larger permitted substance, there's a concept of bittul. We're all familiar with bittul. It's either batul b'shishim or batul b'rov, depending upon the different situations and the different opinions in Shas. Now, midioraisa, if I take less than 1/60th of the cholent, and I take less than 1/60th of the cholent's volume of pig juice, and I deliberately pour it into my cholent, then technically it's batal. However, the rabbis stepped in and they said, "Ein mevatlin iser lechatchila." You're not allowed to lechatchila go ahead and make something batal, and therefore we're going to declare that rabbinically not batal. So it's a rabbinic violation. What happens if a person takes a goze prach, which is a certain kind of nut, which is of value? Let's call it a macadamia nut for argument's sake. It's an expensive kind of nut, and let's say it's orla. So therefore it's prohibited, and only under certain circumstances will it be batal. If it falls in and it's whole, it'll never be batal because it's called a davar chashuv, and that's never batal midirabanan. Let's say I go ahead and it falls into the pot, and then I deliberately go ahead and I break it apart so that to allow it to become batal in the pot. So then, echad shogeg ve'echad mezid lo yalu, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda both say that it doesn't matter whether you broke it apart b'shogeg or b'mezid. Even though it's a rabbinic law, we're going to come down hard on you, both shogeg and mezid, and we're going to tell you that it's not batal. And it's only according to Reb Yossi and Reb Shimon where we will say that if it was done b'shogeg, we'll go easy on you, and we'll say it's batal. But if it was done b'mezid, we're not going to let it be batal. So the Gemara's question is, v'hahacha demidioraisa chad b'trei batal v'rabanan hu degazar v'kakanis Reb Yehuda. So you see, really midioraisa, by my breaking it up and letting it become batal. It's batal min Torah. It's only rabbinically the rabbis say that that's not permitted. And yet Rabbi Yehuda says that if it was done b'shogeg, we're still going to come down hard on you. If Rabbi Yehuda holds, like in our Mishnah, that if a violation of rabbinic law, if it's done b'shogeg, we're not going to penalize you. Why over here does he penalize you? So the Gemara answers, Hasam hainu taimid de Rabbi Yehuda mishum da'asi li a'arume. The Gemara says very, very logical answer. He says, when you're working in the kitchen, if we let you do this one time, you're going to come to do it a second time and say, oops, oops, and you'll just keep on saying oops, and you'll be you'll be deceptive. You're going to start deceiving everyone. Say, oops, I did. Oh. It's like if we're some people, like, they accidentally bump against the wall on Shabbos to turn on the light switch, right? Oops, right? That's Chilul Shabbos, right? So here too, there's too much susceptibility for deception and for fooling not only others but yourself as well. So therefore, the Rabbi Yehuda says there are situations, even though the rabbinic law, when it's just too tempting, if we're going to go easy on you, that we're going to come down on hard on you b'shogeg also. The Gemara now says Uramid de Rabbi Yossi ad Rabbi Yossi. But now that we've invoked Rabbi Yossi, where we see that he's lenient on a shogeg, let's show that Rabbi Yossi seems to contradict himself as well. Ditnan, nitiya shel orla v'shel kilei hakerem. I'm sorry, right. Nitiya shel orla v'shel kilei hakerem shenisarvu b'nitiyos acheros Raizel lo yiloket v'im yiloket yalu be'echad u'masayim u'vilvad shelo yiskavin lilkot. The question that we're going to ask on Rabbi Yossi is that the previous case, Rabbi Yossi was mekel on a shogeg, but he was machmir on a mezid. That if you flagrantly violate rabbinic law and you're mevatel v'yisser, when the rabbis told you not to be mevatel v'yisser, so then we're going to come down hard on you. Here's an example where even mezid Rabbi Yossi is lenient, as we'll see in just a second. But let's first illustrate the case. A person has an orchard, and in this orchard of many, many trees, of hundreds of trees potentially, he's got one tree that's unmarked that turns out to be orla, or turns out to be kilayim, which means that whatever produce grows on that tree is prohibited. So the halacha is, if it gets mixed in with the other trees and you're not sure which one it is, Raizel lo yiloket. Then lechatchila we tell you, don't harvest any of the trees of the orchard, because the tree is not batal, even though it's not identifiable, because if it's growing from the ground as a distinct unit, it can't be batal. Bittul only works when you've got a homogeneous mixture. But if this is not, if every unit is distinct, growing from the ground in a separate place, there's no bittul. However, what happens v'im liket? What if b'di'evid, you ended up harvesting the produce and now you've got all of this produce in a barrel? So yalu be'echad u'masayim, as long as you can estimate that there's 200 times permitted produce to outweigh that one tree's produce, yalu, so then it's batul. Uvilvad shelo yiskavein lilkot, provided that when you first harvested, your intention was not malicious to go ahead and make bittul. But Rabbi Yossi Omer, afam yiskavein lilkot yalu be'echad u'masayim. And Rabbi Yossi says, I disagree. Even if your intention was knowingly to create bittul, knowing that you had a tree in there that was orla and you wanted to make it batul, b'di'evid will still let it slide. We'll still let it go, and we'll let you use all the produce. So the Gemara says, why is it that we let off even a mezid off so easy over here? So the Gemara answers, Ha'itmar Allah amar Rava chazakein adam oser es karma b'netiya echas v'chein ki asa Rabban amar Rabbi Yochanan chazakein adam oser es karma b'netiya echas. The answer is because, as these rabbis point out, that normally people don't do this. People normally will not allow one tree in an entire orchard to be an usser tree that bears usser produce. It's such an uncommon occurrence that since we're only dealing with an Isser D'Rabbanan, we're not even going to penalize a person who violates the law b'mezid, because the rabbis didn't feel they needed to step in such an uncommon situation. As a general rule, the rabbis only impose penalties when it's a common occurrence. But since this is so uncommon, who's going to want to do this? Sticking a tree into his orchard that's usser? People are not going to do this, and therefore, if it's done, it's done. If you come and ask the Shaila, we're going to tell you, Rabbi, the whole orchard is usser until this is alleviated. But if you went ahead and you didn't ask the Shaila, and you went ahead and did it, even though your intention was a little bit sneaky to make it batul, we're not going to penalize
So
you.
he could do it subsequent year as well.
No, we're telling him, if you're coming to ask the Shaila, don't do it. Right? If you went ahead and you did it anyway, we don't penalize you. In other words, if you want to be an erlich yid, as we say, like an honest Jew who wants to do the right thing according to halacha, you'll listen to us. But if you're going to be a flagrant violator, we're not going to penalize you. You take it up with the Lord. Okay, next Mishnah. HaKohanim shepaglu b'mikdash mezidin chayavim. We had seen this referenced yesterday. If a Kohen deliberately goes ahead and has a machshava of pigul, which means he has an improper thought while he's doing the avoda, and he maliciously goes ahead and says, I'm starting this avoda on this animal with the intent to do a portion of the sacrificial rites at the wrong time. He invalidates the animal, but since he did it b'mezid, and we have witnesses that, we saw him twisting his thin mustache and going, I'm Dr. Evil, or whatever they call him on Marvelous Midos Machine, right? Then he says, so if he does that, so then because he's a flagrant violator, we make him pay for the cost of the animal because he's actually caused not only spiritual damage, but he's caused financial damage to the bringer of the korban. Tana Rabbana. So the Brisa now says, Haya osa imo b'taharos, va'amar lo taharos shasisi imcha nitmu. Or Haya osa imo bisvachim, va'amar le zvachim shasisi imcha nispaglu neman. Now, the first part of the Brisa says like this. You have an employee you've hired to transport holy food, food that is tahor. And in the course of his working for you, he comes over to you and says, excuse me, boss, unfortunately some of the grain that I was transporting became tameh. Or let's say he's a Kohen, and he says, Reb Yid, I'm so sorry, but I had a machshava of pigul while I was working on your korban. So in those cases, the worker and the Kohen are believed, and you have to treat the object as either tameh or pigul. However, aval amrlo taharo shasisi imcha biyom ploni nitmu, uzvachim shasisi imcha biyom ploni nispaglu, eno neman. Second part of the Brisa says, by contrast, if the worker comes over to you and says, boss, last week the work that I was doing for you, the grain became tameh, or the Kohen says, Reb Yid, the korban that I did for you last week was tameh, what was pigul, they're not believed. So the question is, what's the difference? Why should you be believed in one case and not in another case? So Ma'ishna Reishu, Ma'ishna Seifa, Amar Abaye Kol Shabiyado Neman. Abaye says a very interesting answer. He says, if the object is physically still within the person's control, either the employee or the Kohen, so then they have believability because they're basically in control of the substance in question. So because they're physically in control of the substance, they're believed to say that I made it either tameh or pigul. But once it's out of their control, they no longer have sort of the bailus, the control over that substance to designate its status, and therefore they can't come to you after the fact, after they've already done the work, and say the work that I did for you yesterday or last week, it became tameh or pigul. Rava says, no, that's not the distinction. Rava would argue that even if it's not under his physical control anymore, he could still be believed to declare it to be tameh. But he says the difference is, kagon da ashkechei v'lo amarle v'lo midi v'lo baser hachi ashkechei v'amarle. He says the distinction is, what if the worker worked for you last Tuesday, and then he finished the work, you saw him on Wednesday at Minyan, and you said Shalom Aleichem. He said Aleichem Shalom, and he went on his way. And then on Thursday, he comes to you and says, at the very next Minyan, he says, Reb Yid, I'm sorry, the work that I did for you on Tuesday, I made tameh. He says, in that situation, because he didn't say anything to you on Wednesday at Minyan, makes it a little suspicious. Like, why did he keep his mouth shut on Wednesday and only open up his mouth on Thursday? That's what makes it suspect, and therefore we don't believe him. Now let's look at a couple of stories. Hahu da amar le lechavre taharos she'asisi imcha biyom ploni nitmu By the way, talking about stories, next week you're going to have a ball. Next week you're going to have lots of fun because we're going to do all of the Gemaras that we learn on Tisha B'Av, Kamsa, Bar Kamsa. All those Gemaras start on Sunday. So try not to miss it. Hahu da'amar
It be that sad.
Yeah, well, you'll get sad, but it'll be fun. Hahu da'amar le'lechavre. Then there was a story about a fellow who said to his friend, Rabbi, I'm sorry, but the grain that I was working on for you, I'm sorry, it became tameh. So asilakami de Rabbi Ami, Amarle, Shura Sadin Eino Neman. So they came before Rabbi Ami and they asked him the halacha. He says that the halacha states that this guy's not believed, and you can still assume your grain is tar. So Amar Lefan of Rabbi Asi, Rabbi Ata Omer Kain, but Hachi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yossi Ma'es Shetorah Heminasa. So Rabbi Asi challenged Rabbi Ami, and he said, Rabbi, I know that that's how you paskin, but I just want you to know that Rabbi Yochanan paskins not that way. Rabbi Yochanan paskins that the worker is believed to declare the Taharos Tami. And how do we know? Because the Torah believes him. So, and that's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Heichan Heminaso. So Rabbi Yochanan, where does the Torah believe someone to say that something is possible? So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna Kohen Gadol B'Yom HaKippurim Yochiach. We know this from the Kohen Gadol. Now, what do we know from the Kohen Gadol? We know that the Kohen Gadol is the only person who goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And we also know that the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to have a machshava of pigul. And if he does have a machshava of pigul, he renders the sacrifice to be unfit. So, Dechi Amar Pigul Meheman. If the Kohen Gadol says, oh, I'm so sorry, I had a machshav of pigul, then he's believed to say that his avoda is not valid and it has to be repeated. But how are we supposed to know if his machshav of pigul was at the time when he was doing the avoda? After all, he's the only guy in the room. He's the only guy in the Heichal on Yom Kippur. The Torah says that on Yom Kippur, no other person may be there with the Kohen in the Heichal, in the covered portion of the temple. So Elalav Mishum de Meheman. So the answer is that the Kohen, after he walks out and the avodah is finished, if he says, I had a machshav of pigul, he's believed. So here, you see, it's an example of where the item is not in his possession anymore, like Aryai had argued, and which is the case over here where the worker comes to him and says, I'm sorry, the taharos that I did for you yesterday became tameh, and it's not in his possession anymore, and yet we believe the Kohen Gadol, so we should believe the worker as well. So the Gemara now says, no, wait a minute, that's not a raya. Just because we believe the Kohen Gadol doesn't mean we should believe the worker. You know why? Because Vidilma, the Shamane, the Pagil. Maybe we heard the Kohen Gadol saying at the moment that he was in the Heichal, we could hear his voice. And he said, ha ha ha, I'm Dr. Evil and I'm going to make this thing piggle, right? So the Gemara says, but wait a minute, Ilav de Meheman, Afal Gav de Shamane, Nami lo Meheman, de Dilma Basar Hachi Ka'amar. The Gemara says, but how do you know? Just by hearing him, maybe he's lying. Maybe he's already done the act of Zrika. He's already done the sprinkling of the blood on the paroches, or whatever he's doing in there. And after the fact, he says, ha ha ha, I'm making it piggle. You don't know if it's at the moment that he's doing, because no one can see him. So you don't know when he's saying it. So Vidilma de Chazine b'pishpash. But the Gemara b'pishpesh. But the Gemara says, but maybe you can see the Kohen Gadol, because there are certain small apertures, small doorways that lead into the Heichal where you can have a view of what the Kohen Gadol is doing if he's sprinkling blood on the paroches, on the curtain. And maybe while he's sprinkling, you hear him say, piggle, piggle, right? And maybe that's why we believe the Kohen Gadol. So you have no proof from here. The Gemara says, Kasha, you're right. You have no proof from the story of the Kohen Gadol, from the halach of the Kohen Gadol, that you believe someone when they say after the fact, something became possible. So the Gemara says, fine, we have a machlokes, but the truth is, we don't have any proof from the Kohen Gadol one way or the other. Now let's look at another story. Hahu da'asu lekami de Rabbi Ami, Amar le sefer Torah shekasafti leploni, azkara shelo lo kasaftim lishman. A sofer comes over to Rabbi Ami, and he says, Rabbi, there's a sefer Torah that I wrote it for such and such a guy, and I have a confession to make. Every time I wrote Hashem's name, I wasn't thinking of Yud K Vav K. I was thinking of maybe he's an early Christian. I was thinking of Buddha. Who knows what he was thinking of, right? But I wasn't thinking about the Jewish Lord. So the question is, we know that Sefer Torah is not kosher. So what's the law? So Amar Lei Sefer Torah biyad mi. So Rabbi Ami said to him, okay, who's now in possession of the Sefer Torah? So Amar Lei biyad lokech. He said, I already sold it to the buyer. Amar Lei nemanata lahafsid scharcha v'iyata neman lahafsid Sefer Torah. Okay, I believe you that you wrote it improperly, so you got to refund the guy's money. But I don't believe you as far as saying the Sefer Torah is puzzle, because it's not in your possession anymore. Once it's out of your possession, you're not believed to puzzle something. You're believed to say that you have to forfeit the sale because you illegally sold it. It's worthless now. But you're not going to puzzle the Sefer Torah. In other words, basically palginan dibura. We divide his testimony to cause, from a financial standpoint, to make restitution, but we don't believe him to passel the Sefer Torah. So Amarle Rabbi Yirmiyah Nehida Hipsit Scharas Karos Scharas the Sefer Torah Kulei Mi Hipsit. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says, well, wait a minute. Why does he have to return the full purchase price of the Sefer Torah? He only wrote the words of Yud Kei Vav Kei improperly. All the other words he wrote correctly. So at least he should be compensated for all the other words in the Sefer Torah that he wrote. So the Gemara answers, Amar Lei in Shekol Sefer Torah She'en Azkar Shelo Ksubas Lishman Eino Shaveh Klum. So Rabbi Ami says, come on, that's not a question. If the God's name is not written correctly in a Sefer Torah, the whole Sefer Torah is puzzle. It's worthless, and that's why he's got to return the whole purchase price.
Can you go back and repair it?
So 1 second, the Gemara says, V'liyavid alayu kulmas v'liktashay. So why Rabbi Ami? But let another sofer come, who's God-fearing, and just pass over with another layer of ink every place where it says Yud Kei Vav Kei, every place where it says God's name, just write over it with ink, and that'll remedy the situation. The fact that you're not permitting that, Kiman, Nema Deloka Rebbe Yehuda. Does that mean that you don't hold of Rebbe Yehuda's law? Did nan Harei Shahayat Tzarech Lichtov Es Hashem V'Niskavin Lichtov Yehuda V'Tav V'Lo Hitel Badalis Ma'avir Lav Kulmas U'Mekasha Divrei Rebbe Yehuda. Here's an interesting case. The guy's a real shlemiel, the sofer. The pasuk calls for writing Yud Kei Vav Kei, God's name. He's half asleep, and he thinks that he's supposed to write the word Yehuda instead of God's name. But he's such a shlemiel that he makes a second mistake and he leaves out the dalet. So he ends up writing God's name, but thinking that he's writing Yehuda. So he's written it correctly, as it turns out, because of the double error. But the question is, what's the law? He hasn't written it lishma. So Rabbi Yehuda says, no problem. Just pass over a second layer of ink over it and do it lishma. So, and v'chachamim omrim ein Hashem min amuvchar. The Chacham say, no, that's not the proper way to do it. That's not the proper way of writing Hashem's name. What they suggest, we won't analyze now, but the point is, why don't you hold like Rabbi Yehuda? Just pass over every single name of God that he wrote, Shelo Lishma, just write over it again, Lishma. So the Gemara answers, no, it's not that I disagree with Rebbe Yehuda. Afilu tema Rebbe Yehuda. Ad kan lo kama Rebbe Yehuda ela b'chada azkara. Avol dekule sefer Torah lo mishum demechsi kimenumar. He says, in principle, I hold like Rebbe Yehuda, but that's only when you miswrote God's name one time. You wrote it Shelo Lishma. Okay, so then we'll let you fix that one place. But if every single name of God in the Sefer Torah was written Shelo Lishma, here's what's you're going to end up with a Sefer Torah that's going to have 2 layers of ink on every name of God. It's going to stand out. It's going to look much bolder than all of the other words in the Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah is not going to look nice anymore. It's going to look spotted. It's going to look like these words the names of Hashem are going to jump out at you, and it's not going to look like a normal Sefer Torah. And that's why Rabbi Ami said it's not a kosher Sefer anymore, because it's not an attractive artifact, religious artifact anymore. What?
It's not normative.
It's not normative, and it's not good. So let's go on to the final case. Hahu da'asur lakami de Rabbi Avahu Amar lei Sefer Torah shekasafti leploni gevilin shelo lo ivadatim lishman. There was a man who was a Sefer Torah manufacturer. He came to Rabbi Avahu and he says, I'm a sofer, but I'm also a manufacturer. So I wrote the Sefer Torah, but I also manufactured the hides that would be used for the cloth. and I have a confession to make. When I manufactured the cloth, I didn't manufacture it lishma, which also invalidates the Sefer Torah. So Amar Lei Sefer Torah biyad mi. So Rabbi Avo said, who's got the Torah now? Amar Lei biyad lokeach. He says, I already sold it to him. So Amar Lo mitoch shatanem lahafsid schar chatanem lahafsid Sefer Torah. Rabbi Avo surprisingly tells him just the opposite of what we learned before. He says, I believe you that you did not manufacture the cloth, so return the guy's purchase price. And I also believe you that now the Sefer Torah is puzzle and you can't read from it. So the Gemara now says, Umayshna mid Rabbi Ami. Why then did Rabbi Ami say we don't believe you to puzzle the Sefer? And over here Rabbi Avo says we do believe you to puzzle the Sefer. So the Gemara answers, Hasam ikalamemar toi bid Rabbi Yirmiyah, hacha kevin de kamafsid kuli yigre v'asa v'amar emar kushta ka'amar. Gemara says it's a fundamental difference in the psychology of the scenario. In the previous case, where the Sofer confesses that he wrote Hashem's name Shelo Lishma every time he wrote the Sefer Torah, Rabbi Ami said, this guy's a shyster. I suspect that maybe he's lying, and the whole reason why he's coming to me and saying that he wrote it Shelo Lishma is that let him get the Sefer Torah back. He thinks, like Rabbi Yirmiyah said, that he'll only have to refund the guy's money for each time he wrote Hashem's name wrong, but he'll get to keep all of the other, the main, like 80% or 90% of the purchase price he'll get to keep, and then he'll just resell it to somebody else, right? He'll resell the Sefer Torah, or he'll, or however he's going to do it.
He's only going to take a small loss.
He'll only take a small loss. And the guy will feel, you know what? So that's when Rabbi Ami came down hard at him and says, I don't believe you. I think that you're trying to pull off some shtick. So refund the guy's money 100%, because we don't paskin like Rabbi Yirmiyah. If you indeed did not write the names of Hashem, then the entire Torah is not worth anything. But I'm not going to let your testimony passel the Sefer Torah. But over here, there's credibility to this guy's claim. There's no way that he could possibly think that he's going to recoup and get more money out of this Sefer Torah by testifying that the klaf is deficient. If the klaf is not lishma, there's no way that he's going to be able to get the Sefer Torah back and resell it to anybody, right? So therefore, we're not going to, so therefore his testimony is credible, because otherwise he wouldn't have come to testify, because he knows that by testifying that the klaf is invalid, he's not only going to have to, he's going to have to return the entire purchase price, and it's completely going to be worthless. And therefore, because he knows he's going to have to lose all his money, there's a certain credibility to his claim, and therefore we believe him to say that the Sefer Torah is puzzle as well.